Hello, welcome to another episode of the Live Cost Construction Experience. Delighted this week to be joined by the Associate Director of Townmore, Mark Cronin. Mark, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Enjoying the good weather, and thanks for inviting me on.
No problem at all. I do want to get into the COVID situation and how you're dealing with it personally and how the company you're dealing with. But I suppose to give our listener base a bit of context, can you tell us a bit about Townmore and sort of what your role is in there in a day-to-day?
Sure, yeah. I suppose Townmore, a kind of multifaceted organisation. We're headquartered down in Tullamore in the Midlands, with offices up in Santry in Dublin and Mallow in Cork and London as well. So we're working, I suppose, across Ireland and throughout London. And our work is very mixed. I mean, it's everything from residential to healthcare. A more recent addition to it would have been specialised stuff such as controlled environments, medical device, biotech, and so on. So it's a wide and varied company. Probably group turnover of circa 80 million and onwards of 100 staff. So it's a good sized company for a company that was only established in 2008, rather, I should say. So we're only 12 years on the go, but we've grown substantially and successfully throughout the recession, and we're in, I suppose, a good stead at the moment and continue to grow year on year.
That's pretty impressive, actually, for that length of time. I mean, I suppose we can't even get into conversation without being stuck in the COVID conversation. I mean, I did come across an article with an interview with yourself, sort of, I think it was mid-April in the Irish Times, and you were basically making the point that these sites, in terms of social housing, medical devices, they need to reopen. I mean, how do you think the government has reacted to that situation? What was it the right thing to do?
I think, it was. They had to put a stop to it and regroup, I suppose. I think from a healthcare point of view, or public healthcare point of view, I think they've done a good job. In the instance of COVID, I suppose the scary part is the rest of the healthcare requirements of the general public seem to have fallen away quite a bit. And, it's not that COVID came in and all other illnesses suddenly stopped, but people stopped going for checkups, for appointments, and that's worrying. And I know they've been beating the drum in recent weeks to try and get people to go back in, but that is concerning because, you can't trade one off for the other. Economically, look, it's great we're back. I suppose construction's one of the first ones back, and we're pleased with that. One thing that was concerning me, I suppose, when I did that article at the Times, I couldn't see a roadmap. So the discussion all day, every day, across all news channels was COVID, as it should have been. It was topical, but there was no sense of hope or roadmap. How are we going to get out of this? And I think that was it wasn't just irking me. I think everyone is kind of getting a bit concerned, particularly SMEs. How are we going to get through this? What's the end goal? How do we get past it? So I think the fact that we have a roadmap now gives something for people to work towards. Gives a bit of hope. Everyone needs a bit of hope, and that does assist it. And I know, if you've got a particular timetable of when your business is getting back, you're finally working towards it. It's no different to a tender or whatever. If you've got a deadline or something to work towards, you will do so. If you don't know what the hell is going to happen, is it 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? It's a bit despairing, I think, for a lot of people. So look, thankfully they brought out the roadmap, and people can see what they can work towards now.
Yeah, it's been a big. I've felt it this week. Even we're only starting, and I felt a lift in positivity. I mean, we're embedded in this industry, and it has been good. I mean, what's new then? What's new on site for you guys in terms of PPE, and how are you managing that?
Yeah, well, I suppose we have spent the last 6 to 8 weeks since things shut down, working vigorously in the background to try and come up with plans. I suppose the CIF have stepped up to the mark quite well on this occasion, in terms of SOPs and how to get back to work. And, they've lobbied the government hard as well to advise that as an industry, it is fair to say, and I said in the article too, we are used to protocols in construction. You don't just turn up in your casual gear and walk away on site and away you go. Everything is systematic, organised as protocols across the board. So we typically operate a 5-point PPE on site across the country anyway. So that would be, your standard hard hat, goggles, your vest, your boots, and so on, and your gloves. We have introduced masks where required. So it depends on, if you have a bricklayer working on his tod down the end of the site in the fresh air, and he's no one around him, he's probably safe enough. Yeah. But all know that there's certain processes that do require more than one person. There's no getting away from it. You try and limit them, I suppose, in the first instance. But if there is something that does require that, you're introducing face masks and so on to try and alleviate the risk. I think our RAMs have changed quite a bit to contend with this. Sign-in processes have changed quite a bit as well, whereby I suppose we use a system called Procore, and we have every site now has a COVID-19 officer appointed, one of the site management team. So when people are signing in on site, as opposed to the usual of getting the biro and everyone sharing the biro or going through turnstiles, it's now verbally done. So he or she will be standing at the gate. The person will introduce themselves. They'll be able to see on the system, look, is this person inducted? Have they got a safe pass? Have they got all the relevant protocol? And then let them through. So we're trying to remove as much contact as is possible. I suppose outside of that, it's a fair bit of cop on is required. It won't be perfect, and it won't be perfect in any sector, in any industry. There'll always be issues arising, but we have been, even speaking to our health and safety manager this morning, we've been really pleasantly surprised with the buy-in from subcontractors. I mean, everyone is making a great effort. I think because everyone's been off work for 6 weeks or so, everyone's chomping at the bit to get back at it, and they do realise that if they mess this up, you could very quickly go back to pre-phase one again, and everyone's locked at home. So
yeah, the alternative to this doesn't look too pretty, because we've already seen it. Yeah, I mean, how do you see it playing out then, sort of over in terms of the industry as a whole? I mean, how do you see this playing out over the next 18, 24 months or so?
It's a funny one, I suppose. Look, we're quite good at adopting. I mean, if you consider, if we were told at the start of the year, listen, lads, we're going to be shutting down the country at the end of March, and you're all going to be at home for 6 weeks, we would have cried. And look, undoubtedly, when Varadkar came on the news that Friday evening, we were all, I think, pretty taken aback. But we adapted, and we got used to it pretty quickly. We got used to being at home, social distancing, the way you do your shopping, etc. So I think we will get used to this new way of working. And the ultimate thing is we have to live with this virus for the next 18, 24 months, probably at least. We don't know. So there's no point in shirking away or hiding, or, we can't lock up the country indefinitely. So we have to adapt to it. And I think people by and large are doing that. And, people are coming up with very novel ways of trying to go about their business because they have to. If you don't come up with a solution, you're not going to reopen. So you have to come up with novel ways to fix it. I think the industry on a whole, it's a bit tentative. I think certainly there has to be continued public sector spending by the government. I think the worst possible thing that could happen is that the government say, right, COVID has cost us whatever, 25, 30 billion. Therefore, we need to reclaim that back. So we're going to introduce austerity, stop public capital spending, because the private sector, I think, kind of runs a little bit in parallel with the public sector. They give each other confidence, and confidence is the key aspect here. So I think if the public sector capital spending continues, schools, healthcare, roads, whatever else, I think the private sector will follow through. The only interesting aspect of this, I think, is really the work from home side of things. You have enormous commercial giants in Dublin, who have fed the economy for such a long time in creating beautiful offices from LinkedIn to Twitter and so on. It'll be interesting to see if they maintain a long-term view of people working from home. Yeah. That'll upset the market a little bit, but I don't know if they'll do that indefinitely, I suppose. And the thing about it is, as long as the virus is with us, even if they have people working, 2 days a week in the office or whatever it is, they're probably going to require more space per person anyway, so it might balance itself out.
That one's going to be interesting, because I think what a lot of companies will have learned through this is that the need to have everyone in one place probably isn't as big as we thought. And I think we maybe have inherited a way of working that previous generations had taught us, but this has taught us, well, actually we have better technology, and maybe there is a better way to work. I think a lot of companies will, certainly ourselves, even we're a small construction technology companies, so we've adapted to this pretty easily, but I'm sure there are other companies that will as well. We were keen to get you on, Mark, because you've got a pretty impressive background in a subject that I'm very, very passionate about and like myself. I started off in my own business, came out and went to as the usual way. Carpenter, running the job, said, okay, this looks easy, I'll just open up my own business because I'm basically running this job for this guy anyway, so this all looks easy. And then you get the harsh lesson. And the harsh lesson for me was there's way more to running a construction company than just running the project. I took a harsh lesson in the first business, and we basically failed the first business because I didn't understand business development, I didn't understand strategy, I didn't understand marketing and branding and all of that. And I took a bit of time out to go and understand all of that before I came back and had a second go. Second go was much better. What, in your opinion, is the differences between marketing in construction, say, versus other?
I suppose still in Ireland anyway, for one, it's very much relationship based. I think, well, for private sector work, certainly. There's anomalies and there's some issues there in terms of trying to gain access. For example, if you're a contractor 3, 4, 5 years old and say you've experience in building housing, trying to gain access into sectors such as education and healthcare, if you try and look at a suitability assessment questionnaire and the minimum requirement is you have to have 3 projects of the similar kind, you can't get in. So it's one of those anomalies where you can't jump into an area and diversify because you don't have the experience, and you can't get the experience because you can't pre-qualify. So it's there are some issues like that. But I think on the private sector side of things, it's very much relationship based, which I quite enjoy. I must say, it's great if you have a lot of contacts and you're able to lean on them and gain business. I suppose it's somewhat more challenging in new business development and trying to gain new relationships. I think new relationships can only be gained out of doing really good work on your other projects and people advocating for you. There's a lot of circles in construction. Decision makers, from consultants to clients to investors alike, they all talk to each other. And I think you're proven by performance, really. So that's number one in terms of gaining access to anywhere. And then it's just harnessing your relationships thereafter. From a marketing point of view, it's an interesting industry in that I suppose pre-recession marketing was so secondary. But in my view, and not to sound remiss about it, but I think strategy was somewhat secondary too. Like up until 2007, you could fill your books relatively easily. You could grow relatively easily. You could jump into most sectors relatively easily. And the recession hit, and obviously, everything went away, and people had to rethink their strategy. They realized, geez, suddenly there's a lot of fish in this very small pond, and marketing came to the fore. And companies, we need a good website, we need a good brochure, we need to present ourselves, our bids, our tenders need to present well, because there's a lot of us fighting for very little work out there. And I think that was a very positive thing. It's interesting I think now, for example, from a marketing perspective, I think there's many contracting companies that stand up as strong as even business to consumer companies in terms of how they present and market themselves. They've tried the introduction of mission statements and brands and colours and hoardings. You'll see from cranes to signage. It's at a different level, and there's a lot of competition in the marketing front now, which is really healthy to see. It's great that we present ourselves in such a manner that it shows the good work you're doing internally. There's no point in.
Yeah, I mean it's hugely important in terms of a lot of people look at branding, marketing in an aspect of this is what I need to do to win more customers, and I don't need that because I've got these relationships built, and therefore I don't need to invest all that money into that. So I've got a great black book that's done me up to this point. But what people don't realise, the other side of branding and marketing is attracting and maintaining good staff is also attached to this strategy. I.e., what you say, when these guys are putting their brand and their brand values in front of people, where you've got a shortage of skills in the industry and you've got people now that are in a position where they can make a decision who they work for, I think this pays off.
It does in a big way.
Yeah, I really do. You touched on one thing there, Mark, that I just wouldn't mind bringing up. I mean, a lot of guys in the conversation talk about the tender and the bid process, and it's, I'm in a tender process, therefore, why do I need marketing? I understand how to put a bid together. I mean, how can marketing strategies be applied to that sort of bid process?
Well, to a bid process, I suppose, again, bids in terms of their appearance and submission have changed an awful lot from pre-recession to now as well. So you would have seen the introduction of a much better marketed material post, or well, I won't say post-recession, since the start of the recession, I should say. Pre-recession up to 07, you could very often just bang in your former tender and general summary and away you go. There was no questions asked. I think a lot of procurement officers and PQSs and PMs now are looking a lot deeper, and they're wanting to see what your company is about. You can't just jump in and go for it. So I think that's a positive thing. I would have seen a massive shift change in 2008 in terms of how bids are presented, and they're now really, really proper marketing documents. They're a brochure of your company, and they're putting your best foot forward. I suppose, look, you would have seen the introduction, speaking from a technical perspective, the likes of InDesign, Photoshop, a lot more softwares to create proper material to go out there. But like the marketing and business development side of things go hand in hand in that regard. The instance about bids, I suppose, and it's something I've worked, I suppose, in for 12, 13 years now. It's timing, it's delegation, it's, I suppose, quality over quantity. We would have had a habit in this industry of drawing up a 100-page document and you kind of throw it at it. There's your Bible, your answer is in there. But if you're making it hard for the person procuring to find what they're looking for, you're on the back foot straight away. So if you're in receipt for PQS, for example, and it's a 20 million euro apartment building, and you're in receipt of a very nicely presented document, it sets a tone immediately. You go, geez, these guys look professional. And you can punch above your weight in that regard, even for smaller contractors. But then it's about, I suppose, drawing up your bid exactly as per the requirements. So you make it really easy to read, really easy to mark. It's no different to, I suppose, an exam in school or whatever. You just make it easy for the reader and you will gain marks better. And then it's quality over quantity as well. Don't just throw the Bible at every part of the thing because you have it handy and you don't want to put the effort in. Read the stuff, and just 2 pages of quality will definitely be much better than 20 pages of generic stuff all day, every day.
Yeah, there's a couple of things you touched on there actually, which are interesting. You're obviously saying 12, 13 years experience there putting these bits together. If you were to summarise three of them points that you touched on there, 3 top tips, let's say, for a successful bid, what would they be?
I suppose, look, there's a few things. So if I had to look at it from start to finish, being in receipt of your bid, I suppose the first top tip is review it at the earliest opportunity. I think we all have a habit of, and look, there's still times where you kind of, particularly if you're busy, you might receive a tender in and you've got 5-6 weeks to return it. And it kind of gets put over there because, look, I have this much on my desk and I need to get at this before I even look at it. That's probably the worst thing you can do, because if you do that, you're just going immediately on the back foot and you're putting yourself under pressure. So I would say reviewing it straight away from the front end. I'd usually do a kind of a tender launch summary whereby I review the requirements. Second top tip is delegate early. So typically for a bid, you'll have from an estimator, perhaps project manager, planner, etc. Delegate out what their requirements are and give them deadlines at the earliest opportunity, because that way you're giving them time. And then the third thing, I suppose, a top tip, which a lot of people don't do, and I think it's, we're all a little prone to it, is reviewing your submission. I mean, it would be easy if you have 10 different elements just to grab them from the various stakeholders, bang it together and put it through. But actually reading through it thereafter and making sure that it's correct, it's accurate, right. You shouldn't just presume that all different stakeholders are going to write it in the correct manner, answer the question. Whatever, you have to go through it, and you have to go through it in detail, and you have to be articulate and review it as if you're marking it yourself, and that way you're challenging yourself throughout. Yeah, there are probably 3 key elements. Other than that, presentation is critical as well. If you present a really nicely put together bid, nicely bound, it sets the impression straight away with the reader. Yeah. If you're set with a positive impression as the person marking it from the front end, you do tend to lean more so on the positive side of your market. Whereas if it looks crap, you tend to mark it poorly as well. That's just human nature.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely spot on. I mean, you've also got, obviously the Townmore currently are active in the UK, but you've also got experience in the Middle East, I suppose. What's different then between the bidding and procurement process here versus, say, UK and Middle East?
Well, I suppose across the UK and Europe, it's not enormously different because, we all follow European guidelines to a point. Some of the challenges, like in mainland Europe, would certainly have been language barriers, but by and large, most multinationals, if that's who you're working with, work in English anyway, because they're usually born out of the UK or out of the US. The UK is a good market to work in my view. I like the fact that it's traditional. It's a funny one. They often like to see the fact that you have proper overheads, proper profit in your jobs, as opposed to in Ireland. There's still sometimes a tendency to cut the price for the sake of cutting the price, to get the job at all costs. But they'll challenge you a little bit more over in the UK in terms of, I suppose, the way you price it to ensure that you actually have built in a price you can live up to and that you can deliver on. The Middle East is an anomaly, to be honest with you. The Middle East is not just from a bidding perspective, but from carrying out work perspective, it's unlike anywhere else. And I think anyone who has carried out work there will advise of that. I suppose the first company I was working with, we would have done work across the Emirates, from Dubai to Abu Dhabi and so on. And it's I suppose you need a sponsor there locally to back you. But the way business is carried out there, it's unlike anywhere else. So I suppose if you are going to try and branch into new markets, you have to understand the way they conduct business. You won't go too far wrong in Europe, to be honest with you. But having local people on the ground is a good help. Look, Enterprise Ireland can be helpful in gaining access to certain markets too. Yeah. They would have certainly helped us out at times. But I think understanding the market, and if you're really going to be bold and try and go into a market such as the Middle East or Northern Africa, for example, you really need to do your homework before you get in there, because things can go very awry very quickly unless you're informed, shall we say.
I mean, you're touching on the UK there. It looks like we're going to face an inevitable recession here, meaning so as many companies are going to start looking at the UK, probably even further, the same as they did in the last recession. How does a company evaluate a new construction market, and I suppose how do you decide where you should go?
Yeah, well, I suppose again this is another learning from the recession the last time, and I think people have learned that you have to balance out the sectors you work in. You have to balance out a bit of private and a bit of public, because either one can fall at any time. And what you just alluded to there, you perhaps have to balance out the geography, so that if Ireland goes downward, that you perhaps have another market that you can lend your resources into or put more weight on for a period to get things going again. For the UK, for us, I suppose, I'd be speaking out of turn because we've been working in London. I'm with the company 4 or 5 years, but they're working in London there 10 or 12 years. So the guys understand that market. London's a great market in terms of, it's another anomaly, to use that turn of phrase again, because London is an economy of its own, even within the UK. Yeah. Always operate, it'll always keep busy, keep ticking over. You'll even have seen throughout the last recession, there were still plenty of cranes up. For a lot of people, London's the centre of the world, for Middle Eastern people and so on, more so than New York and so on. So there'll always be inward investment there, I think. But in terms of establishing a market, you have to first of all understand what's your reason for access. Why are you doing it? You've got to establish, is there a market there? I mean, certainly a company I worked for before who would do a lot of data centers across Europe, the key reason they jumped into countries across Europe was frankly because there was no one else providing the service that they were offering. So in general contracting, it's more challenging because I suppose most countries have general contractors there who are probably going to perform the same thing as you. But if you're getting into more specialist space, or say, I suppose a good example would be John Fleming going into London and doing vision build over there, which he's made amazing success out of. And he has, he's now building the largest modular building in the world in London. And, Fleming obviously would have struggled massively here in the recession. Mm-hmm. So he saw a market, he saw something that nobody else was doing, or certainly nobody else was doing it his way. And he got access and he got resources on the ground. And, thankfully, he's keeping a lot of consultants over in Ireland busy with the work he's doing over there. So that's the good thing about, I suppose, working internationally is you can still rely and fall back on your Irish staff to do a lot of the donkey, a lot of the heavy lifting.
We do seem to travel well. I mean, I spent 9 years away, and I was always amazed when I hit the big projects across Sydney, prepared that when you got into senior management level that there was an Irish representative nearly everywhere you went, you know, whether that's project management, site management. We do travel well, our skills seem to travel well, so I mean we shouldn't have any fear about going into these markets. Some will probably question whether they're big enough. I suppose in your experience then, what experience should you have at senior management in your own team before you even attempt to go and look abroad?
I think it's great to have people like I suppose one good thing on the back of the recession was so many of our people travelled and got that international experience. You did in Australia, loads of our guys went to the Middle East, the UK, some even to the States, and a lot of them have come back. They've brought that experience with them. So we can say in our company alone, like our managing director spent time working in the UK, North Africa, the Middle East. Regional director here in the East spent a good bit of time in the Middle East as well. So they're bringing that experience back with them. It's more challenging, say, if you're a small business, perhaps, you know, much further down food chain. But I think it would be possibly silly of them to jump into an international market too quickly. I think the skill sets within the company have to be very strategic. You have to have good financial acumen within the company as well, and commercial acumen. Understand the contracts, understand the implications of not fulfilling your contracts is a huge part of it, particularly in places like the Middle East and that. But like I think for any business in Ireland, construction business or otherwise, small, medium or large, I think jumping into the UK isn't such a big deal. I know companies that turn over 3 and 4 million who have performed jobs in London, for example, successfully. It might be a one-off job because a client dragged them across and there was no issue. We understand the UK very, very well. There's no issues jumping in there. There's a few language barriers in the likes of France, Denmark, Switzerland and so on. But by and large, most of the Irish companies that are working over there are working in specialised areas such as pharmaceutical, data centres and so on. I don't know if there's a market for a general contractor just to jump into countries like that. There probably isn't. These are well-established markets themselves, even more so than ours. So I think, look, if you have a management team who have good financial acumen, good contractual understanding, you need good legal representatives to make sure that you're not jumping into something you're unaware of, and then go into a specialised area. I think you could be on the winner very quickly. Like we do travel very well as a nation. There's no doubt about that.
I 100% would agree with that, and have my experience of that was very positive. It was actually it always surprised me. It's just something that always struck me when working on these projects across Australia was just that the Irish impact on these jobs was absolutely huge, from senior management right down into the trades. I mean, for those that don't see international markets as an option, where do you see opportunities for growth within our own Irish construction industry?
I would think, it's a funny thing, I suppose, from 08 probably to 2012 or 13, there was a lot of companies had fallen back into public sector contracts. It was probably one of the only games in town, frankly. There wasn't a lot of private work out there. There would have been some degree in fit out and so on, but they fell back into public contracts, and their strategy probably from 2012-13 was increase the size or quantity of private work on your books. So let's lessen that public sector work. It's the margins are too tight, it's too challenging, the contracts are heartbreaking, etc. But it's amazing how quickly things change. I think at the moment, any contractors who have public sector work on are probably pleased to have it on because they feel the job will happen, they'll get paid, there's hope there. And I think people are relooking at themselves again and going, geez, it's very important to keep that balance of public and private work. So I think for the next 12, 24 months, I think certain sectors such as hospitality are going to fall off quite a bit, which is unfortunate, I suppose. Look, we have a lot of hotel experience. We've done 4 hotels in Dublin. We have another one in Cork at the moment. We have another one due to start there in Dublin 1. But, those people are suffering more than any other. I think hospitality has got the biggest blow here. So I think that's going to fall off. And that's been a real, stronghold for many companies for the last couple of years. In terms of resi, it's an interesting one. Social housing has to and will progress. That problem hasn't gone away. But in terms of private resi, I think, and I'd imagine a lot of private investors and funds who back these, it's one thing being a front, but ultimately you need to get the sign off from the fund who's backing you to build. I think they're quite tentative at the moment. I think certain ones in the right locations where, the site was probably got at an appropriate cost and so on will drive on. but I think some more speculative ones will hold back a little bit now. Perhaps be a little bit tentative and kind of go, right, let's see how this plays out a little bit, which you'd expect. So the areas, I suppose, if I'm strategizing, I'm thinking, right, public works, strong enough, healthcare, education, and so on, they'll go on well. I'm thinking probably the controlled environment side of things for our business in a way, from medical device and so on, they're busy. They've upped the ante this past while. A lot of our clients in that field, they make things from inhalers to masks and so on, so you can imagine how busy they are. Yeah. That's a good space. And outside of that, I suppose, on the private side of things, as we said, hospitality has dropped off. There's still some resi going. Commercial office, speaking to peers in the industry, they're saying there's still a lot of opportunity and there's still a lot of positivity out there. So which is great to hear. I suppose we've jumped into this COVID thing in very good stead financially as an economy. And it was dramatic what happened to all of us and how the stop was there. I think if the government does an equally dramatic response in terms of helicopter some money in to the appropriate SMEs and get things going, get things fluid, which they have access through the ECB now with the €750 billion fund. I think if they make the right financial decisions, we can get back moving again relatively quickly. So, it's all in confidence, to answer to Ciaran. If there's confidence, and we need to instill confidence in people and say, it's okay, we can get back at it now, we have things under control. If we incite fear in people, things will drop off dramatically, to be honest with you. So I think sector-wise, I think public sector works, and I think certain areas in private sector, such as pharma, medical device, and so on, will proceed as planned. And some resi jobs will proceed as planned. Commercial office seems to be buoyant, which is good. I can see hospitality just dropping off dramatically. That's the one that's going to be hit most, unfortunately.
A lot of food for thought for business owners and operators out there. There's definitely being, the rug is being pulled from us. There's no doubt, and it's the line in the sand thing where, okay, that was then. What's now? How are we going to approach this? No one really knows how it's going to play out. We all have our opinions and how we think it's going to see, and going by past experiences is always good. You've given us some great stuff in there, Mark, actually around things to look out for in terms of UK and especially around them bids. You're working for a very interesting company. If people do want to know more about Townmore or even find out about yourself, where can they find you?
Well, for Townmore, they can go to just townmore.ie. That's townmore.ie. Or look, we've been working hard on our LinkedIn page, I suppose, for this past while. So there's about 4,500 followers there. So we update that quite regularly. And then if you want to find out more about me, you probably need to question what you're doing with your life. I wish I was more exciting, Ciaran. I'm not that exciting. You can ask my wife. Yeah. She'll give you the honest answer.
Bids win work, Mark, and that's been highly valuable in terms of the advice and tips and stuff you've given around there. It really is good. Your forward thinking around marketing and the alignment from marketing to bids is impressive, and I'm a huge fan of it. Mark, thank you very much for coming on. I wish you all the best with this sticky time, but I'm absolutely no doubt you're going to come flying through it. So thanks very much for coming on.
No worries, thank you. And look, if I could say anything, I just think people, let's keep confident and keep pushing. We can talk ourselves into a problem or a recession here very quickly. If we keep confident, keep talking ourselves up, I think we'll get the hang of this pretty quickly, and we'll get through it. So that's important.
Yeah, fully agree. All right, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ciaran. Cheers.
Bye-bye.